I appreciate it. So this is I can't even tell you how many Creative Mornings I've been to. And it's kind of cool to be on this side of things. So I'm happy to talk to you all today about innovation. Honestly, you kind of shoehorn things in where they fit. But because we're talking about innovation, I'm not meaning it in like that tech bro kind of way, even though we are in Union Hall. Sorry, Centrifuge. I'm talking about something that's a little bit more human, which is somehow more radical. I'm talking about the fact that artists are not extras. So I got hired on at the Cincinnati Regional Chamber in March of this year. So I got to go to one of the board meetings. And in the board meeting, they presented some information from the State of the Region report, which is like a big research study that they do in every year. And they give us a bunch of statistics on the city and who's doing what and how many of this happened to there and, numbers, right? I'm clearly not an analytics person. But in this particular report, there was a huge section on arts and culture sponsored by ArtsWave. And they talked a lot about these really amazing stats, how arts and culture is like $1 billion with a B dollar industry here in Cincinnati and how it employs so many people. But they didn't talk anything about artists, like the artists themselves. And when I looked around that room at all the board members, and we're talking like people from P&G and the head of the airport and Kroger and all those folks, I did not see not one artist in the room. So I thought to myself, we talk a lot about being a city of the arts, which is amazing. We do have fantastic arts here, but there is no the arts without the artists. And I want us to remember that, because when I say artists, I mean probably a lot of the people in this room, honestly. I mean people who are creating things, painters, photographers, graphic designers, musicians, fashion designers, dancers, people who are in the theater, performers. And those are the people who are creating the things, like the things that we can touch, but also the experiences, like we're having in this room together right now, that make life. Life is not just about work. Life is about living and sharing those experiences with other people. And while artists may not always get the pay or the recognition that they deserve, which is something I'm working on, very much so, they are a vital and central part of the business community. We were talking a little bit during my intro about what that looks like to be on the creative side and on the business and strategy side. It's not impossible, but sometimes it requires just a little bit of extra work. And I want artists to be recognized and treated as central and vital members of the business community. But I think to do so, that's going to require some system level change. Right now, the system is artists are kind of on their own, especially if you're not employed by a larger organization. And you kind of got to figure out a bunch of shit. Can I cuss in here? Oops, my bad. You kind of have to figure things out on your own. They typically are not teaching business courses in art school, or even if you are self-taught, that's stuff you got to do the research. You got to do your Googles. You got to ask ChatGPT how to do stuff. You got to figure it out on your own. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that way, because it's not that way for other small businesses. So a few years ago, I stood in front of a Creative Mornings crowd. This was like 2017, and did my little 30-second pitch for Tether, which was a community that I created for local image makers. So think like photographers, hair and makeup artists. I was a photo stylist, so other people who are in that realm. And the idea was to connect the community of image maker creatives and the business community. But what I don't think that I realized at the time is that they're not really two different communities. There does seem to be a perceived gap between us sometimes, but really no one is more important than the other. The P&Gs are not more important than the independent artist creating a mural on the side of a building. We are all, to some extent, in business, and we should all be working together as equals and partners. But because that's not necessarily how things have always been, we need system level change to make sure that artists have access to those support structures that we typically give small business through organizations like the Chamber. So a lot of times what happens when you're trying to push forward a newish idea is you have to connect some seemingly unlikely partners. So sometimes this looks like people who don't necessarily seem like they would go together or that they would work well together. Because back in 2019, I believe it was right before the pandemic, the Hale Foundation funded a study of local artists. I think they surveyed like 800 or more local artists and basically just asked people like, okay, so what do y'all need? What's missing? What structures or systems do you wish you had in place to help support you and what you're trying to do and what you're trying to build so that you're not a so-called starving artist? And one of the things that they found is that artists need entrepreneurial and business support. So there's a lot of really cool information in the report. I think it's still on Wavepool's website if you go there. And you can look through and see all the numbers, more statistics, right? But we need numbers to back up our stories sometimes. So there's a lot of really good information in that report, but that entrepreneurial skills and business support part stood out. And it kind of attracted the attention of two unlikely partners. And while they don't seem like they should mesh, they do. So the Cincinnati Regional Chamber and the Hale Foundation were like, this is an interesting finding. Like, we know that we have a lot of artists who are contributing to the arts here in the city. There's so much talent. It's kind of insane given the size of our city. And we know that we have a pretty strong business community. I mean, we're in a room where we're, I don't know, a stone's throw from a couple of different Fortune 500 companies, in addition to all sorts of startups, like those ones that are here in Union Hall and other mid-level, mid-sized organizations that do all kinds of stuff. And the Chamber supports them, and the Hale Foundation is more on the like do-gooder, supporting artists and creatives and other organizations that are trying to make a change for the better for individuals in the world. And while it does not seem like those two should go together, you know, peanut butter and chocolate, what you gonna do? Sometimes things that come from unexpected combinations can be really amazing because of that. And it came from, honestly, them having a few discussions and realizing, again, that we're not on opposing teams, we're not on opposite sides of a wall. We're all part of a larger community, big picture, of people that are just out here being people together, all at the same time. So in order for us to help people understand that, to recognize that, to appreciate that, to support that, sometimes we have to build what's missing. And when we all came together, the Hale Foundation, the Chamber, a couple of different organizations, leaders from different arts organizations, individual artists themselves, one of the things that we realized was missing was that link that connects independent artists and creative people to that successful, sustainable work portion. And that was infrastructure that we don't necessarily apply to independent artists. We have it for businesses. So if you work in a company, you know, you get certain things. You get access to healthcare, you get benefits, you get a regular check, you get steady income, you know where your money is coming from, you can save up, you can afford to do things and have housing and all the things that you are required to do as a human being. But you also get to do some, hopefully, you enjoy the job you are doing, you also get to do some interesting work. And one of the things that we're looking at building is a directory or an online public-facing site that connects people who are considering themselves independent artists, running a business, because a lot of times artists don't like to think of themselves this way, but if you are doing work and asking people to pay you for it, then you are kind of running a business. If you've sent an invoice, you're a business owner. So the idea behind the Cincinnati Artist Network is to connect visual, literary, and performing artists with real-world resources. So this is like the community connection part where this is public. You can look for anybody that you might want to have access to, and people who are joining the directory as members creating a profile, which is always going to be free. basically get promotion via the Cincinnati Chamber's vehicle. So, obviously we have a newsletter and a bunch of different members who are bigwigs at a number of different organizations, but we also have a lot of different connections within the civic and business community that artists need to be a part of. So when I was talking about that board meeting earlier and I didn't see any artists at those tables, my goal is to make sure that an artist it is at every table where a decision is being made. So this is the starting point for that. And then next year, because the chamber is a chamber that supports businesses, large and small, we will be launching a tiered membership level where people will have access to the things that they need to be people. So this includes everything from access to healthcare options, which is unfortunately a very big deal right now, access to networking opportunities through the Chamber's leadership programs, where they bring in people from all sorts of organizations and literally sit those people at a table to discuss the future of the city. Again, artists should be part of all of those conversations, and they should be leading different initiatives here in the city, because I have not yet met a creative person who did not know how to problem solve. That's the gist, right? That's where creativity is. So the idea behind CAN is to make sure that artists who are independent or independent creatives have access to all that stuff that they need to be successful and build sustainable, financially stable careers here in Cincinnati. You should not have to leave this city, which does have a lot of fantastic things going for it, to do that. So this literally just launched this week. We're still in beta technically, but I trust y'all. So if you go to the website, if you go to this URL, you will see the website pop up. And I want you to check it out. I want you to try to break it. I want to get your feedback, because the people in this room are the people that we are here to support. And your encouragement, support, feedback, everything just helps build a better and stronger product and community for everybody. So for me, this is kind of personal. So I've been in the corporate world. I did that for a number of years. I've freelanced for over a decade. I don't want to say exactly how many years, but I founded Tether, and now I'm doing this. So this is it sounds really weird to call it my life's work, but it does sort of feed into that. This is something that I've always been really passionate about, and I want to make sure that we are valuing people who create art as both small businesses, but as individuals who need support as well. So you, again, have first access to the beta site if you visit this URL. And you have access to me too, if you ever just want to have a coffee or a chat and run some ideas over. Any questions? Got you.
So I did sneak and take a look at the website.
Okay.
I'm working on filling out my profile.
Yay.
But in addition to that, are there other things that we creatives can be also proactively doing to help bridge that gap?
Bridge the gap between the business community.
Yeah, the other businesses.
Yeah, so guys, this sounds annoying. Stuff like this is amazing, and I go back and forth with the word networking, but networking is important. This is a city that is very much built on relationships. You probably already know there's maximum 3 degrees of separation between you and anybody else in the city. Watch what you say, okay? But the more you can get out and make face-to-face connections with people who are in that community, which again, we're all part of the same community, the easier it's gonna be to start building those relationships and figuring out ways that you can work together. So the Chamber has a monthly event called Coffee and Connect. No, that might be somebody else's event. Cincy Blend, thank you. The Chamber has a monthly event called Cincy Blend, and all kind of people come to that. I would encourage you, if you are in the creative industry, even if you are an independent, just come check it out, see who's there. Say hi to a couple people. I always make it my goal to talk to just one other person, so it doesn't have to be a big lift. But it's important to get into those rooms. Yeah.
I'm an independent graphic designer. How will this manifest, once it's all together, your vision? Can you say something more about how I will experience or interact with it if I choose to do so, which why wouldn't I?
So the idea behind, so the funders want a site, right? They want a directory of artists that are in the city so anybody can find them. That's great. For me, my goal, and perhaps it's a little bit of an ulterior motive, is again to make sure that artists, people like you, and a lot of the other people in this room who have experience, who are creative, who understand how to solve problems, have a seat at the table when it comes to meetings at City Hall, when it comes to those meetings where they bring in a bunch of different CEOs to kind of figure out who they should support in whatever political campaign, when they decide whether we're going to put a park here or a building there. We should all be included in those conversations, if not leading them. So if you are if you are at a certain level of your career, which it sounds like you are, and you are trying to take it to the next level where you are, again, a leader here in the city, not just in the graphic design community, because you already got that, in the creative community, you're already here doing that, then this is meant to make that happen. Yeah.
I really loved how you just made the connection that it's not two separate groups, that we're one group, the business community and the art community. And how you pointed out that artists are problem solvers inherently. But I'm wondering if you can talk to any other terms or commonalities that you've seen between the two communities. Because I think sometimes as an artist it can feel intimidating, like, well, I don't do innovation like they do it, but it almost by fear putting myself under what I think these other groups can do. So could you illuminate any other commonalities or ways that we can, see how different terms mean the same thing?
So I remember a couple years ago, Michelle Obama put a book out, and she was talking about a couple different passages in the book, and she made the point that, we think of people in the highest levels of government as like super smart, above all this stuff. They know so much more. They can do so much more. They've had so much more experience. I'm down here and they're up there. And she was basically like, I've been in those rooms. They are not any smarter than you are. They don't know any more than you do. They don't have any special, amazing, super skills that you don't already have. It's just people. It's just people. Yes.
Do you have any examples where you've seen people from the creative community invited to be involved and be in those rooms, and like how that played out?
Yeah, so I'm actually working on a case for that right now. So there's a couple of different programs in what they call the Leadership Center at the Regional Chamber, and this is like, they invite, 50 people in a cohort to come, and they're from different companies, sometimes like corporations, sometimes arts organizations, nonprofits, et cetera, from around the city, and they're all in the same room, and they do team building activities, and they solve a problem, and it's all great. We do have one actual artist whose work you've probably seen up and down this street, who is a member of a current cohort, and because of that has been talking to the people who are seated at the table and has built relationships, which I mentioned again, the city is built on, with those people, and therefore gotten opportunities that he probably wouldn't have gotten if he hadn't been there, including an opportunity to be on the board and be at those meetings, at those tables that I was talking about at the beginning of this presentation. So when I talk about, recognizing that it's just people and that relationships are everything around here, that's like the two connecting points that I usually try to emphasize. And the more it happens, the more it will happen. Cincinnati is kind of a place where people need to see it to believe it. So if they can see, well, this does actually work out. That's not too bad. That's not hard. That's not dangerous. It's not a huge risk. Then they are more likely to continue doing it. So the more we can get y'all in the rooms, talking to people, and talk about those other examples, the more momentum it will build. Yes.
Love everything that you're sharing and how you're presenting this. I'm just thinking through in terms of how we can be the best allies for this program. Like how are you looking to grow like first? Like are you looking for more of like the artist connections and you want people to build profiles out on the directory, or is it more about looking for those that are wanting to hire an artist or get some consultation or get a contractor in the door?
That's a great question. And it's a little both, which is kind of annoying to me personally, because it's hard to do both at the same time. For me, the focus is always going to be on the artists. Like that's who I don't want to say that's who I care about, but that's my priority. I care about everybody, obviously, right? So right now the priority for me is getting people to explore the site, see what works, see what doesn't, create a profile, see if anything breaks. If so, let me know. We'll fix it on the back end. And then probably in spring-ish, we'll do more of a public launch where we're actively reaching out to different companies and organizations to make sure that those artists are, welcomed and recognized as part of that larger community.
Thank you.
Hello. I was wondering, in your research, have you found any correlation between like the financial support for or difference in support and financial backing for visual artists versus performing artists? Because I almost feel like as you're working to build and bridge the divide between people in business and artists, there's even a divide between artists
themselves.
Like being a performer artist.
Yeah. I think when most people think of art, they think of visual arts. So it is difficult, like that's a hump we got to get over. Now, when we talk about the arts here, we're also talking about, for the most part, people understand that we're talking about like the CSO and the CBT and all the other organizations that do music and dance and theater and performance. But I think we do need to be really intentional about making sure that artists include that entire breadth of people. And there are differences in how things are done. Like typically visual artists are not going to auditions. Like there's nothing wrong with that difference, but it's recognizing that both are valid and valuable. I don't have any like specific research on that, but I know that there are differences and we'll probably have to do a little bit more digging to explore what those are and how to better serve both of those sides of the creative community. Yeah.
What is something you would say or advice you would give to quote-unquote radical artists with a mission in dismantling corporate or supremacist spaces as they're networking with businesses that aren't necessarily values aligned with them?
It's difficult when your values don't align. I have run into this a couple times in a couple different positions. You can talk to whoever you want to, and I always encourage people to be as you can be. There's no point in trying to tamp yourself down to meet somebody else's expectations. I don't like that. I don't agree with that. So talk your talk, okay? When you meet people, and if you are not aligned, you can say that. I think that's fair to say. And it's fair to say why too. One thing that I have found when it comes to like people from corporations who are used to working in, very specific silos, and here's what I do, is they sometimes respond well to solutions. So if you're like, you know what, I'm glad we met. This is my jam. I don't think it goes with your jam. Here's what I would appreciate seeing from you in terms of the type of change you can make to whatever point it is that you disagree with. I think that's perfectly valid. And sometimes, I don't want to tone police anybody, but obviously it's nice. It's helpful to say it in a way that makes it feel like you are offering solutions-oriented advice versus giving orders.
What's the next project that the chamber's going to be taking on where you want to get somebody at that table?
So in February, I believe, we have a big, I forget what it's called. It's like they award the greatest living Cincinnatians and big dinner over at the new convention center. I got my eye on that one. I went to literally, it's a seated dinner. So there will literally be people at tables. I want artists to be there. I have a goal of 5. Yes.
I was so happy to hear you talk about some of the future plans might involve some kind of membership in healthcare, because this is something I used to work in large institutions, and I also had a union background, and now I work for myself, and so I'm like navigating the healthcare marketplace and things like that.
And it changes.
Sort of, maybe your golden horizon or whatever metaphor you want to use, what that might be in terms of economic support for artists, because there are some amazing things happening in other parts of the world. I think I just saw Ireland's been experimenting with universal basic income for artists. The state of New York, during the pandemic, had a trial emergency.
Creatives Rebuild New York, yeah.
Creatives Rebuild New York.
Yeah.
So can you speak on that, and what you would, I know it's going to take, especially a city like Cincinnati, a long time to get somewhere like that, but what would you love to see eventually in terms of that, like, social safety net for artists?
I think for us, we are one of the few cities that does not have an arts and culture person in the government, in the city government, which is like, hello. We just haven't done that. We are relatively corporate. I don't know if anybody has noticed, but the corporations run the city. So basically the cities are like, well, Arts Wave takes care of that. So we don't need to have anybody that does that. Honestly, I think that's our first step in trying to get, working to get, advocating to get a position in the city administration that is specifically responsible for arts and culture. So that person or group of people has the power to dictate where some of those city funds are going, because that's going to be our best hope in terms of providing that type of support. And it's worked elsewhere. Like, why? Why not? Oh, yeah.
So this endeavor, I would think, is utilizing your whole self, but a lot of your kind of more logical business kind of side of your brain. Do you have a personal art practice that feeds you and helps you continue with all of this stuff?
Yeah, it's more of an escape at this point, honestly. I do so enjoy talking to artists and other creative people. Like, that is like my favorite part of the job, if I'm being complete. Like, I like spreadsheets, I do. Freaking the sheets. But when it comes to like the job, it is, you're very right, very like right-brained? Is that? I always forget which side of the brain handles the logic stuff. For me, I do a lot of, like, I have a background in graphic design and photo styling, and, you know, I consider myself a fashion girly. So that's kind of where my other outside interests come into play and keep me, like, interested on the creativity front and self-expression front, where I might not always get to do as much of that as I want to do on the corporate side. Yes.
As an independent creator, I think it's something that I have a lot of conversations like this where most artists don't really have the wherewithal to do all the marketing stuff, to do the conversations, to randomly go to dinners and X, Y, and Z. And I think this platform that you're building could really bridge the gap for those folks. Now the question is, how much legwork they need to put in order to make it work for them?
So this is something the Chamber tells its members all the time. Like, we can lead you to water, okay? Or sometimes we can bring water to you. We can bring you a glass. You got to do the drinking. So in terms of the legwork, my goal is to be really intentional about curating and promoting artists, specifically to some of the Chamber's, you know, civic and business partners and beyond. But I think if you are hoping to build a successful, sustainable, financially stable life and business for yourself, then you do have to put in some legwork. I would say, like, I'm trying to think of a percentage. You're gonna have to give like 40%. I went to a workshop 2 nights ago over at the Marketer Collective building down the street. And one of the things that really hit home for me was that, I can't remember exactly what the quote was, but it was basically like, the visibility is part of the work. And I don't especially love being visible right now at this point in my life. But again, if you want to do the thing, it's just as much a part of the work as sending the invoices and, making sure your bank account is up to par. Okay. Oh, one more.
I'm curious, this sounds like a big job for you to hold. Is there a plan for you to have a team in this to become, its own structure in and of itself so that you can really go with it?
Yeah, that's the idea eventually. So basically the Hale Foundation provided funding for like 3-ish years of operations. So this was year 1. Year 2 is we got the site, we're building it, we're adding artists, we're promoting it, we're promoting individuals, we're connecting people, et cetera, et cetera. That is a ton of work. So I have, a co-op that I've been working with, and obviously the chamber team provides some support, which is why I think part of the reason it was taken on by that organization. But for me, ideally by the time we hit year 4, I'll have a staff of people who can execute, and we'll still probably receive funding and grants and things like that from other organizations that believe in the project and the process. But ideally by year 4, heading into year 5, we'll have more people, more resources, and more stuff we can do for people. Yeah.
You were talking about health insurance or just utilizing that as a resource. Will it look something, which I don't know if you're familiar with this, with Freelancers Union? That's what that reminded me of.
Yeah, so this is actually, the chamber has, part of the reason this was born or given to the chamber as a program was because they already have that stuff in place. Like if you are a member of the chamber and you're typically it's like businesses, then you pay your membership fee and you get access to what's called Chamber Health, which is it's called a MUA, Multiple Employer Welfare Agreement through healthcare. So basically it would work exactly the same way as any other chamber member, where you contact the healthcare provider, they got to get some information about you to figure out how much your premium should be, and then you can sign up. A couple years ago, it was only for businesses that had, I think, 3 or more employees. Last year or the year before, they tweaked it so you could do it if you only have 1 employee. That would include everybody that's self-employed. Yeah. And so that's how we were able to get people into that program. All right, well, thanks everybody. I'm always, again, available if you have any other questions or comments.